This is the Iron Will Report for the week of June 9th. In this week's report, unlabeled gene-edited foods may already be in Canadian grocery stores, a petition to stop agile regulations in Canada, David Johnston's non-investigation of Chinese interference in Canadian federal elections, and the lie of green energy is exposed when wind power drops to zero for just a few hours. That and much more. This is the news that mainstream media won't report, and our government doesn't want you to hear. In a recent article published by Joseph Mercola, a company called Pairwise edited mustard green's DNA using the gene editing technology known as CRISPR to remove a gene that gives them their pungent flavor. Pairwise is a pioneering food startup that uses CRISPR technologies to improve taste and nutrition in produce. They claim their conscious greens are field-grown superfood greens that eat like lettuce. And these conscious greens are not the first genetically engineered product to show up in stores. CRISPR is being increasingly used to alter natural foods, including taste and shelf life. It's said to be exceptionally precise. DNA is a language made of base pairs, and genes are important because they make up everything about us. Defects in genes can cause disease. Previous attempts at gene editing were done in blocks, but CRISPR-Cas9 technology allows the editing of genetic information down to the individual letters, resulting in the manipulation of individual genes. CRISPR-Cas9 has led to unexpected side effects, including enlarged tongues and extra vertebrae in animals. Further, large genetic rearrangements were observed in mouse and human cells, including DNA deletions and insertions, not at, but near the target site. CRISPR seems to exacerbate a natural process known as retrotransposition, in which DNA sequences known as mobile elements replicate themselves and move from one location in the genome to another. These elements have been linked to disease, including cancer. What this means in plain English is that modified genes may cause genetic changes in other genes that were never the target of the CRISPR modification. The USDA is working with a US company to test gene-edited insects in greenhouses and is adding genes to kill female fruit flies while sterilizing males. Jason Delborn, professor of science, policy, and society at North Carolina State University, told MIT Technology Review that gene-edited organisms can move through the environment and change the environment at a worldwide scale. The plain English interpretation of that is potential ecological disaster. When these would-be gods in lab coats start messing with genes, they can't possibly know the repercussions. What if, for example, they accidentally created a mosquito that would be toxic to the dragonflies that eat them? Dragonflies, like many organisms, are a vital part of the food chain and the Earth's biosphere. What would be the repercussions of killing off all the dragonflies? I don't know. And the point is, neither do the scientists who are messing around with this, which makes it all the more concerning that governments seem to be unaware of the risks. The US Food and Drug Administration granted Recombinetics gene-edited cattle a low-risk determination for marketing products made from their meat. The FDA streamlined the process for gene-edited cattle to enter the food market, stating that the cattle do not raise any safety concerns. Brazilian regulators allowed Recombinetics to proceed with gene-editing cattle without special oversight. But a piece of bacterial DNA became pasted into a cow's genome, rendering it part bacteria. What will that do to the cows? Or the people who eat the meat? We don't know. But I would be concerned about eating beef that is part bacteria. I've always enjoyed my beef rare, but that doesn't kill all the bacteria. Are we going to have to become wary of eating beef, just as people were afraid to eat pork for millennia due to trichinosis, a parasitic infection that came from eating undercooked pork? Due to the fact that companies are not required to label gene-edited foods as such, you have to be very careful what you buy at the grocery store. Buying organic is no protection either, as there's no official government description of what constitutes organic. Go to farmers markets. Find butchers that sell meat directly from the ranches. It is impossible to predict what these gene-edited foods might do. But we can be certain that until a disaster happens, forcing legislation to put a stop to CRISPR foods Companies will continue to produce them. I reported several times on so-called Agile Government and Agile regulations. Agile here is doublespeak for approve things without actually testing them to see if they are safe. This past week, we learned about a petition to the House of Commons, sponsored by Ontario Conservative MP Dean Allison, asking the Government of Canada to halt any regulatory changes that would result in approval of under-tested, potentially high-risk medications for healthy Canadians and livestock. This would include CRISPR tech and mRNA vaccines. The petition was initiated by Dr. Susan Natcha, a pediatrician from Ontario. Currently, the petition has almost 4,500 signatures. To sign the petition, go to petitions.ourcommons.ca and search for E4448. The petition closes 2 weeks from now, on June 24th. In a report released Wednesday by Blacklock's, after absolving Cabinet of any wrongdoing in its handling of suspected election fraud involving Chinese agents, David Johnston testified that he did not see, quote, every bit of information we would like to. Members of the House Affairs Committee expressed surprise that Johnston never contacted Elections Canada. Am I confident we saw every bit of information we would like to have had, or perhaps should have had, given the ocean of information, said Johnston? The answer is no. I'm not sure how we could absorb any more than we had in the space of 2 weeks or 8 weeks. 2 weeks, 8 weeks. Is Johnston doing a Biden here? He was appointed by Trudeau on March 15th. Johnston delivered his decision to not hold a public inquiry on May 23rd. To help you out, David, that's 10 weeks, 2.5 months. Are you saying you didn't have all the material evidence and intelligence when you drafted your report? Asked Conservative MP Michael Cooper. Replied Johnston, when we drafted our report, we had the intelligence then available. Bloc Québécois MP Alain Thérien questioned the depth of Johnston's investigation. Did you meet with Chief Electoral Officer Stéphane Perreault? Asked MP Thérien. We did not, replied Johnston. Have you met with the Commissioner of Elections, Carolyn Simard? Asked MP Thérien. We did not, replied Johnston. Johnston, in his report, rejected a public inquiry as expensive, lengthy, and pointless. In my view, a person leading a public inquiry would be unlikely to learn more about who knew what, wrote Johnston.
I see nothing. I was not here. I did not even get up this morning.
The House Affairs Committee noted yesterday that all but the Liberals voted in favor of a public inquiry on March 2nd, March 23rd, and March 31st. I believe the vote was based on allegations that were false, and that it would be wrong for me to simply step aside and say, well, let those allegations stand. You know, that's the fact. That's the truth, said Johnston. That would not be the right thing to do. On what basis do you believe the allegations are false, Mr. Johnston, since by your own admission you never spoke to any of the prime sources before absolving Trudeau and his cabinet of corruption? The former Governor-General is expected to testify next Thursday at the Commons Public Accounts Committee regarding his role as a member of the Trudeau Foundation. Wind power generation fell to near zero levels across Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and deep into the central United States this past Wednesday morning. According to the Southwest Power Poll, or SPP, which provides power generation data from grids in Canada and the United States, wind power reached a record low for several hours. On Wednesday, wind power generation for the SPP only contributed 1.1% to total electrical production. The remaining required 98.9% of energy production was generated by coal and gas-fired power plants. Coal accounted for 40.8% of the power generated in the region, while natural gas contributed almost half, at 48.3%. Many wind farms across the SPP reported no wind, and 26 out of 36 wind farms in Alberta were producing zero electricity. And this is hardly the first time renewable energy sources like wind and solar energy have dwindled to near zero levels. Rational people like yourselves understand this happens whenever the wind dies, just as solar power fails at night or under heavy cloud cover. Even if the assumptions of the green policy makers pursuing their just transition weren't based upon the complete fiction of man-made global warming, it must be obvious to them that so-called renewable energy is completely unreliable. And unless they're dumber than even we think they are, they have to also understand this will have severe repercussions. What happens, for instance, when a society dependent upon green energy goes several hours without it? Food in refrigerators and freezers goes bad. Computers stop working, which in our society today means we grind to a collective halt. Patients in hospitals die when the machines keeping them alive shut down. Traffic lights stop working, and with nowhere near enough police to man every intersection in major cities, accidents will happen. People will get hurt. And those pushing through these green legislations have to know that. There's no way they can't. Which means either one of two things. They either buy the ridiculous notion that if we don't take drastic action, if we don't allow some people to die in the name of saving the environment, then we are all doomed. If that's the case, we need to educate them. There's plenty of material out there, starting with my own interview a few months ago with former climate alarmist Tom Harris, where he shows data that proves that man-made global warming is a myth. It's not happening. But there's a darker possibility, much darker. They know that global warming is a myth. And if they know, then all of the propaganda and misinformation about global warming serves another purpose: getting people to willingly give up their basic rights, even their right to live. That is all for this week's free version of the Iron Will Report. If you want to help us spread the truth, please subscribe to our channel, then like and share this video. Social media algorithms promote content based upon how many followers, likes, and shares they get. So please take just a few moments to do that and help us share the truth with others. In this week's members version at ironwillreport.com, a recent government-sponsored poll reveals that Canadians want internet censorship. In the past 23 years, over 1,500 babies born after botched abortions were left to die or murdered by doctors. The government censors a church after falsely accusing them of trying to block Canadians' access to abortions. Some civic governments now want to charge you to park your car in front of your own house. The creators of Chatbot deny use to a conservative group that removed the code instructing the bot to lie to people. The WHO takes another step toward global vaccine passports, and a Canadian federal court rules in favor of random drug testing at nuclear power plants. This past week, I released the second of 5 in-person interviews I did at the Reclaiming Canada conference in Victoria 2 weekends ago. In my interview with Dr. William Mackis, he reveals that despite people taking fewer shots, the death rate from unknown causes is accelerating. You can see that interview at ironwillreport.com. Also, tomorrow we will release my interview with the Honorable Brian Peckford, the sole surviving author of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In that interview, we discuss Mr. Peckford's childhood and memorable experiences from his time as the 3rd Premier of Newfoundland. Memberships at ironwillreport.com support our work at Strong and Free Canada to recover and defend our rights and freedoms. Get the truth that mainstream media won't report and our government doesn't want you to hear for just $9.95 per month with a 15-day free trial. I will never accept corporate or government funding in any form. Our efforts at ironwillreport.com to bring you the truth are entirely funded by our members. This is your guarantee that we're working for you. Help us to spread the truth and support our fight for our rights and freedoms. Sign up today for a 15-day free trial, unsubscribe anytime in the first 15 days, and you will not be charged. You are also not locked in and can cancel your subscription at any time.